Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 66. Anything you build on a large scale or with intense passion invites chaos. Francis Ford Coppola.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my indie film hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Don't forget to head over to freefilmbook.com. That's freefilmbook.com to download your free film audiobook from Audible. And today's show is sponsored by USC Film School's only online course, Directing the Actor, by the legendary Nina Foch. An excellent course. Just head over to indiefilmhustle.com/USC. I wanted to talk about, guys, what really is an independent film. It is something that I talk a lot about with other filmmakers and people in the industry and outside the industry, and they always ask, what is an independent film and what is the actual definition of an independent film? And I think it's something that we needed to talk about, and I also wanted to discuss. So I want to hear what you guys have to think in the comments of the show, on Facebook, on Twitter. Please send out what you guys think really an independent film is, because I've been reading this amazing book called The Declaration of Independent Filmmaking, An Insider's Guide to Making Movies Outside of Hollywood, by Mark Polish, Michael Polish, and Jonathan Sheldon. It's an older book that I just came across and been reading, and it kind of is blowing my mind a bit. It is based on the filmmaking escapades of the Polish brothers, Mark Polish and Michael Polish. And I had the pleasure of interviewing Michael Polish a few weeks ago, and we will be having his interview coming out probably in about a week or so. And it's remarkable, a really, really great interview about how he was able to make his one of his movies, For Lovers Only, a shot on a DSLR in 2011, I think. And the movie has grossed over, I think, $500,000, and it was a no-budget film. But we'll get into all of that when we get into that interview. But right now, the question is, what is an independent film? What really is the definition of an independent film? And my definition, at least, as well as the Polish brothers, is a film that is done outside of the Hollywood system. Now, many filmmakers believe that it's based on budget. So if it's a budget of, can there be an independent movie that's $5 million? No, that's just a studio movie that's hiding underneath an independent title. And by the way, in the 90s, when the independent film movement started growing, when Hollywood started seeing independent films making money, then they jumped in and they started to kind of brand it. And now indie film is basically kind of almost like Mike Polish, like in the book, it says, they basically just say it's kind of like the term fat free. It's so generic, and they're just using it to sell more product. And that's what studios are doing now as well, is they'll take a movie, call it an indie movie. It might be a little bit riskier than, their big studio tentpoles, but it's still using the same method, the same system, the same machine as you would in a studio, in a full-blown studio movie. So, it's not based on budget, because you know who the biggest independent filmmaker of all time is? That would be George Lucas. I know a lot of people don't think of George Lucas as an independent filmmaker, but he is the ultimate independent filmmaker, in the sense of he was able to create his movies his ways outside of the studio system. Whether you agree with him or not, and if you liked his movies or not, is irrelevant. The relevant part is that he was an independent filmmaker. He wrote the check for the prequels. He wrote the check for his movie Red Tails. He made those movies himself, and it got distributed by a studio, but he made it without any interference from anybody, and did not change his cut or change his vision for any reason. Some of us would say that would be a mistake with the prequels, but anyway, that's beside the point. But so someone like George Lucas is an independent filmmaker. So an independent film is a movie that's done outside of the studio system, outside of micro studios or major studios or Hollywood production companies. Indie film is really about filmmakers telling stories that are not being told in the main Hollywood mainstream or in the main cinematic mainstream of the world. That's how the French New Wave got started. That's how Dogma 95 got started. These kind of movements John Cassavetes' work, all that kind of stuff. These guys were making movies that nobody else was making. Easy Rider was a movie that kind of shook up Hollywood. It was an independent film that made more money than any of the studio movies that year. And the studios had no idea how to deal with it. So independent film should be an expression of the artist, the director, the filmmaker. And almost all studio films do these wonderful things called test screenings. And based on those test screenings, endings are changed. Things are changed all the time because of these test screenings. Now, in the business, this is a test screening or an ending that's been changed because of a test screening is called a San Fernando ending, which means that a lot of films are test screened here I live in the San Fernando Valley here in Los Angeles. And they are basically everybody here in the San Fernando Valley apparently is a representation of all of America, according to Hollywood and its test screenings. And they are the ones that here in San Fernando, in the San Fernando Valley, will do test screenings. And based on those notes, they will change endings. So it's called the San Fernando ending, which is hilarious to me. But I've heard stories of, had a friend of mine who, won a bunch of awards, including Sundance and many other film festivals. And in her second film, she signed on and had a bigger star attached and went through living hell because of the producer and the production company with test screenings and changing the edit and not changing, and basically this poor filmmaker was so beat up after the whole thing, she just decided to kind of walk away till finally when the producers changed the edit and showed the edit, they couldn't sell it. So they said, well, let's just go back to your original edit. And that was the one that sold. But by then she was already beaten up so much. And I think that experience showed her what independence really means. And her next movie she did completely on her own, financed it herself, and to express the story that she wants to tell. And that's really the true essence of what independent filmmaking is all about, guys. That's why what I try to do at Indie Film Hustle is to empower you guys to survive and thrive in the film business. And I want you guys to be able to express yourselves as artists, as filmmakers, as entrepreneurs within the film industry. And this definition of what independent filmmaking is, or an independent film is important to understand, because not always independent films are supposed to make money. I would hope that they do, because there are the realities of life, and you have to make money in order to continue to do your art, because unfortunately, for better or for worse, filmmaking isn't a very expensive art. It's not just a book and pen. It's not just a laptop even. It's not a canvas and paint. It is an expensive medium to express your art in. And remember, budget is not the definition of an independent film. Because if budget was the sole definition of independent film, then pornography, softcore porn, many other things that are budget related that shoot films would be considered an independent film. And I don't think that's what the term independent film really means. So the differences are a Hollywood production company is adjacent to or attached to a Hollywood studio, or has a direct relationship to a Hollywood studio. So a lot of times they'll create a movie, and in that movie, you're going to have to go through all of the same crap that you would go through in a studio scenario. Test screenings, trying to make the ending happy, trying to appeal to as massive an audience as possible. Now, I'm not hating on studio movies, because you know what? If you're spending $200 million plus another $150 million on marketing on a feature film, you better be appealing to the most mass audience as possible. You have to be responsible with the budget that you're given. I'm talking specifically about independent films, where an independent film really should be about an artist creating and expressing their vision. In today's world, there is no reason why you as an artist, as a filmmaker, could go out with $5,000 like a Mark Duplass did, or Joe Swansburg did, or Lynn Sheridan did, and go out and make your movie and make it and tell the story you want to tell and get it out there. And if you make some money back, great. Hopefully you will, and continue to make movies that way. Joe Swansburg did that for, probably about 10 to 12 features before he even started making real money, but he was popping them out like water, and he was doing them for $5,000, $10,000, $7,000, whatever, just to get them out there. And that's what he did. And that's something that you guys can do. Into today's world, if you start building up your community, you're building up your following, you can sell your art to people and they can support you and you can continue to make the art that you want to make. And that's what it's all about, man. Just being happy about what you're doing and expressing yourself as an artist and as a filmmaker. So it's a really, really exciting time to be a filmmaker. And again, guys, I hope you got something out of this episode in regards to what an independent film really is. But I also want to hear from you guys. I want to hear from the tribe. I want to hear what you guys think really is an independent film. And, you know, please leave me comments in the show notes. Leave it on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever you can get a hold of us. Email us. I want to hear what you guys have to say about this topic. And, you know, as a community, we want to discuss things and get things out there and help each other and get different points of views on anything we're trying to discuss, especially something as broad of a question as what is independent film. This is just my opinion, as well as the opinion of the Polish brothers in their book. But I really thought that this is something that we should discuss and get out there and just have that conversation and get that conversation started. So if you want the show notes for this episode, head over to indiefilmhustle.com/066. I'll leave a link there for the book, The Declaration of Independent Filmmaking by the Polish brothers, as well as some of their work. The film North Fork, for lovers only. North Fork, by the way, is Roger Ebert called it a masterpiece, and it really is. It's a wonderful, wonderful independent film, and the story of how they made it is even more amazing. As well as For Lovers Only, which is that DSLR movie that I told you that made a little bit over $500,000 with no budget. But definitely a pair of filmmakers that you should be watching and looking at how they've done things and how they're doing things currently in today's world as well. And don't forget to head over to filmmakingpodcast.com. That's filmmakingpodcast.com, and leave us a review of the show. It really helps us out a lot. So as always, guys, keep that hustle going, keep that dream alive, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.